And I think we are recording. Well, welcome to another edition, episode 14, as a matter of fact, of Touchstones Music. I'm continuing my series of music and albums from the 1960s, albums I purchased when they were first released in the 60s, and which have been musical touchstones for me ever since. I want to introduce these albums to people who haven't heard them before, and reintroduce them to those who have, but haven't listened to them for a while. Oh boy, have we got a good one for this episode. Another art rock excursion, this time from 1966, The Doors. Let's hear a little clip from that. From, in fact, the number one single from this album, Light My Fire.
You know that it would be untrue.
Just listen to that organ. Wow. Okay, the band. The band were Jim Morrison on vocals, John Densmore on drums, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and Ray Manzarek on keyboards. And there they are in about 66 when this album was recorded. Now, Jim Morrison and Ray Manzarek met, as the story goes, by chance on Venice Beach in California in early 1965, but they already knew each other from their days attending the UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. Morrison sang some lyrics to Manzarek that he'd just written, and Manzarek already began thinking of music he could add to it. The original band included Manzarek's two brothers from Manzarek's previous band, Rick and the Ravens, there's a name for you, and jazz-inflected drummer John Densmore from the band The Psychedelic Rangers, because they immediately put a band together. They added bass player Patty Sullivan, but she only stayed long enough to record a six-song demo with the band in September of 1965, before she left. Now, the band famously used various bass players when recording over the years, but they never had a bass player live. When performing live, the bass was supplied by Manzarek himself, playing a Fender Rhodes piano bass left-handed. He sat it on his Vox Continental organ and played the organ with his right hand. Robbie Krieger joined on guitar late that year. I think he was a friend of Densmore's, after Manzarek's two brothers had left the group, stating that they didn't think the group had a future. Krieger had only been playing electric guitar for a short time. His previous experience was with folk and flamenco, and you can certainly hear that in his playing, especially the flamenco. A stint at the LA club London Fog gave them performing experience and confidence. Now, from May 66, they kind of moved up a notch. They were a house band at the famed Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Strip until they were fired in August for profanity and explicit sexual references on stage. And this would not be the last time this happened. This was a harbinger of things to come for the band. And this particular instance involved Morrison reciting the Greek myth Oedipus during a performance of The End, which was kind of one of their original compositions and kind of the big showstopper in their set at that time. Now, as I recall, Oedipus was all full of Oedipal, or rather, The End was all full of Oedipal references anyway, so I don't know why it made any difference in that case, but evidently it got them fired. So there's where they were fired from, the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. Now, as fate would have it, I actually went to the Whiskey in 74 with a friend. We were visiting Los Angeles, some friends in Los Angeles, in fact. And we went in the middle of the afternoon, it's the only time we had available. Not the greatest time to see the greatest bands, I suppose. But anyway, we saw this kind of, as I recall, second-rate Alice Cooper imitation. Yeah, the lead singer even had a snake on stage. I wasn't too impressed with the band, but it was just cool to be sitting in the famous Whiskey A Go-Go. Now, back to the Doors. Shortly before they were fired, their act was seen by Elektra Records president Jack Holtzman. The Doors signed with Elektra Records on 18th of August in 1966 and recorded their self-titled debut album also in August of 1966. So August of 66 was a huge, huge month for the band. The studio was Sunset Sound in Hollywood. There it is there. The label, of course, was Elektra. The producer, Paul A. Rothchild. The length was 43 and a half minutes or so. It's about right for a album of those days. Album peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart, so that's very, very good. And, wait for it, they had 2 singles come out, Break On Through, which made it to the number 125 on the Billboard Hot 100, but the other single, Light My Fire, made it to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And we listened to that song on the radio, AM radio in those days, for months, if not years afterwards. But great song, fortunately. Now, the title, it's a self-titled album, obviously. The band took their name from the book The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. Now, Huxley himself is referencing a quote by English poet William Blake. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. Well, that was the kind of philosophical stuff a lot of us were into in those days anyway. So, the back and front covers are basically just photographs of the band. And there's the credits for that. Now, I first saw the Doors on a TV show, as a matter of fact, sometime in late 1967 or early 68, I believe. I'd already heard their hit Light My Fire on the radio. And in fact, I believe I'd already bought the album. I admit I didn't know what to make of Morrison's performance at first. It seemed too histrionic for my tastes. I never really warmed up to a stage act, full disclosure, but I loved and still love the band's music. All of it. Every album. So let's talk about the vinyl. The first song is Break On Through to the Other Side, which we will hear a cut from in a minute, Soul Kitchen, Crystal Ship, and so forth. And the last song is the album extended version of the hit song Light My Fire. Let's hear a little bit, though, from Break On Through.
A day destroys a night, night divides a day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side.
Listen to Krieger's guitar kicking in there with the fuzz there. Great stuff. Side 2 opens up with the Willie Dixon blues classic, Backdoor Man, of which the band does a very credible job, I might add, and ends with, appropriately, The End, which was the big, long sort of showstopper that we heard a clip from earlier. Let's hear a little bit from The End.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
So you can tell there that Krieger does have certainly those flamenco and folk influences, and also that this is, in fact, an album from the psychedelic era. Now, it's difficult to explain to people how massive and hugely popular and influential the Doors were in the latter part of the 60s. They came out of the gate full speed with this album and the single, and although the critics later sometimes savaged them, their fans haven't deserted them to this day. Only Morrison's untimely death in July of 1971 in France interrupted their career arc. He had a heart attack. The other members would continue to perform together over the years, while Morrison's reputation as a romantic but doomed artist gained cachet in the popular imagination. He died in Paris, for heaven's sakes. How much more romantic can you get than that? The Doors is another groundbreaking album from the 1960s, and many fans' copies of the vinyl recording had their grooves worn out by repeated listenings, and mine was no exception. In fact, I eventually purchased a replacement vinyl copy. This album has been one of my touchstones since I purchased it in the 1960s, and I hope it will also be for other music fans. Well, that's all for this edition. As always, until next time, be well, and thanks for joining me.